You know, possibly. And there are discussions going on with a lot of folks about that right now. I think that there are a number of interested parties and groups that are looking at filing litigation. And there's a couple different possibilities. There's a possibility that we could initiate some of those, and there's also a possibility that we could file an amicus brief. I think there's also government entities that may file amicus briefs as well. And so I would refer you to what my county did with some of the voting rights issues. Again, when state government, under Governor Kasich and his allies, Republican allies in the legislature, when they passed some very extreme rules having to do with voting access, there was litigation about it, and my county was, I believe, the only county in Ohio that ended up filing an amicus brief to say that no, you cannot change the rules for early voting at the 11th hour. And actually our brief, I'm proud that Cuyahoga County's amicus brief was actually cited by the Sixth Circuit when a lot of those rules were thrown out. So I think there's a couple different directions that could go.
Are you looking at just doing an initiated statute on just the provisions that deal with women's health care, or are you going to go out for multiple parts of the budget?
That's something that we've had a lot of discussion about, and that's just kind of a strategic question, because to me this is the beginning of the conversation, it's not the end of it. And I can't kind of impose on a coalition exactly what portions of it I think should be challenged. I mean, if it were up to me, I'd like to challenge, you know, half a dozen or more. But I think you do have to be strategic, and you have to make sure that you don't have voter fatigue. And I think you have to consult with your partners and say, where is there the greatest chance of making a powerful statement, and where's your greatest chance of success? You know, there's a number of provisions there that I would like to see taken out. I think that the women's health provisions are the most egregious and have provoked the most justifiable outrage. I think they're the most likely to be overturned by the voters, not by a small margin, by the way, I think by an enormous margin. I think you're going to see polling coming out. I predict you're going to see polling coming out, especially if any polling is done on this rape crisis issue, this gag order that's being placed on rape crisis counselors. And I think you're going to see polling showing that the vast majority of Ohio voters, men and women, think that it's outrageous. Outrageous. And so I think that's probably would be the easiest, so to speak, to have repealed, but I wouldn't limit it at that point, because I don't want to short circuit the discussion that we have with our partners.
So, Ed, on the rape crisis provision, it's something that's been kind of in the news for more than a week, the debate going back and forth. It was in a separate bill, and that bill was unanimously supported by House Democrats. Mm-hmm. I mean, can you just comment on that, on how, you know, members of your party unanimously supported a bill that had that stuff in it, and now are criticizing the same provision for being
because here's what happened. In one of the most, what I really think was one of the most cynical things that this legislature has certainly ever done, the leadership of the legislature has ever done, and maybe any legislature has ever done, is they try to put the Democrats in the legislature in an absolutely impossible position, where they inserted this language where they said that a rape crisis counselor could not actually tell the victims that were seeking their assistance, give them full information about what their options were. And then they threatened the Democratic minority that if they didn't go along with that language, they would cut out the funding entirely. So they basically placed a gun to the head of the Democrats in the legislature and said, if you don't go along with this, we're going to eliminate the funding. And again, I have to ask the question, in the 21st century, what problem was that provision solving? I dealt with a number of victims of sexual assault and rape, and they have a long list of problems and traumas that they have to deal with. And you do, when you're a prosecutor on a case, or you're investigating a case, you really get to know the individuals that find themselves in that circumstance. I never heard the victim of a sexual assault say that one of the things that they were struggling with was the fact that the rape crisis counselor had given them too much information. So I don't understand what it was solving in the first place. But the Democrats in the legislature were placed in an unenviable position, and their hope was that that extreme language would be taken out in the conference committee, or or the governor could have certainly corrected the problem. They didn't initiate that language, they didn't write that language, and I think what you'll see is if there's a ballot challenge on it, look, it'll be crystal clear then who's in agreement with that language and who isn't. It will be crystal clear. And I don't think you're going to see any Democratic member of the legislature say that they don't believe that the provision should be taken out. I don't think you'll see that at all. Yes, sir.
You said that you're going to prioritize at this point focusing on the women's health issues within the state budget, but I think it's generally